here you are as a rep. You're going into your first ever solo case because your senior rep can't make it for whatever reason. This is the life right here, day in the life. This is a pass or fail situation. You're, again, becoming a liability because you're not necessarily able to help the doctor at that point, and then fainted in the OR. I was able to, like I said, from day one, start calling on surgeons and having a conversation with them about my product, not having to use any kind of fair balance. I also had a medical terminology background. I had an exercise and physiology background. I had an anatomy and physiology background, and that is a cart chase going on. You guys are in for a ringer on this one. All right, so I was asked a fantastic question, and I felt like this was something that I needed to let all of you guys know about, because I also had thought about this whenever I was doing my research and looking around for different opportunities. The question is, what's the difference when it comes to starting out in pharmaceutical versus medical device? And I have to say, it is without a doubt like two sides of a coin, the complete opposite. I have the same amount of experience in both, that being two different medical device companies and two different pharmaceutical companies. And I feel like for the most part, probably this is pretty average across the board. So I feel like the information that I'm going to give you should be relevant to most situations that you're going to find yourself into. Let's jump into pharmaceuticals first. When I was getting into pharma, I had at-home training. This was pre-pandemic and again post-pandemic. So when I say at-home training, don't think that this was just a pandemic issue. This was how training went. It was anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks worth of all of the initial onboarding pieces that you're going to have to do, plus, let's say, holy shit! Excuse me. Plus, let's say about 3 to 4 weeks of that being a general, broader knowledge of the biology of how your drugs interact within the body. And then maybe 1 to 2 weeks worth of a deep dive into the actual product that you're going to be working. So that encompasses those 4 to 6 weeks. And during the hiring process, what they're trying to do is hire as many people for the open positions as possible at the same time, so that they can justify putting together a cohort of people that are going to travel for training in person. Now, when you show up to training in person, you will have had, most likely, to have passed maybe 1 or 2 exams online at your home study prior to going to your in-person study. And at your in-person study, you will have anywhere between like 1 to maybe 5 different exams that you're going to be taking during the time that you're there for in-person training. Again, this is completely based around my experience, and then at the same time, the idea of how many different products that you might have. If you're only going to be talking about one product, maybe you only have 1, maybe 2 exams that you're having to take. Both the times that I have started on the pharma side, I've had 2 different products. So I've had several more exams that I've had to take during my time. And then that also has extended in the amount of time that I've been at training. Typically for one product, you're there for a week. So me being there for 2 products, both of my trainings lasted 2 weeks, both with the option of being able to go home or travel around the area over the weekend. And let me finish the pharmaceutical side by saying, should you not pass one of those exams, this is a pass or fail situation where you will be terminated. And while that sounds very scary and kind of ruthless, you have to understand that it's not at all. For us to be able to go out and have conversations with providers, we have to pass a certification exam, and we have to be able to verbalize the product and have a fair balance when talking about that product. Meaning talking about the features and the benefits, all the positives. You also need to fair balance weigh in the negatives that could happen when using the product. So you need to learn all of that stuff. And if you can't pass that stuff when you're there in person, then that means you're not going to be able to really do it when you're out in the field. So unfortunately, you will most likely be let go compared to getting an extended training opportunity. They'll just let you go and find somebody else to backfill the role that you were just now backfilling. It happens, so be aware of that. And going back to the very beginning, when I said that pharma is the complete opposite of device, that certification as well as verbalization that you need to pass, those are FDA requirements. We are not allowed to go and talk product with providers until we have passed that, and they can show and put it into the company's records that you have passed those pieces to be able to actually now go out and have a conversation with providers. Now, the other side of the coin, being the device side, for the two different companies that I worked for and talking to different counterparts of mine and friends that are in different areas within medical device, this has been the same across the board. I don't understand why this is considered the Wild West. I don't necessarily know what the opposite of the Wild West is to like talk about one side being more structured. I don't know, the conservative East? I don't know. But I want to say the device side is very much considered the Wild West. I've even been told that in the interview process, basically asking me, have I picked up any cowboyish tendencies, which just means being like a lone wolf and doing things how I feel like that I want to do them. And that's totally based around the medical device mentality, because there are a lot less regulations for whatever reason on the device side compared to the pharmaceutical side. So that being said, when I got started on the device side from day one in both of those different companies, and again, this is echoed across other companies and divisions that I have friends in, they were already able to go out and start calling on doctors and trying to go cover cases. Sometimes certain places are going to have more stringent requirements when it comes to not your background check, but basically you have to have certain credentials to be able to get into certain facilities. Depending on how great the relationships are with other reps in those facilities, sometimes you can get into those facilities without having any of your credentials done. So when I say I was covering cases from day one, I was not finished with my background credentialing process that some of the health systems require. But again, this is my experience and my experience alone. You guys kind of take it for what it is. Maybe you go a week without covering a case because they give you week one to get all of your credentialing taken care of. Not me. I was already out there covering cases. And the reason I was able to get out and cover cases at the second device job was I had already taken care of all of those credentialing processes at my previous role. It was just a matter of getting my roles changed into the system so I could still go and check into the hospitals that I was already covering cases at. It was just a matter of getting my my company changed. So that wasn't really a big issue on that side. But that being said, I was able to, like I said, from day one, start calling on surgeons and having a conversation with them about my product, not having to use any kind of fair balance when it came to things, just telling them how great my product was, all the features and benefits of it, that I was able to learn within a day in a crash course from a possible senior rep, and go out there and immediately start trying to generate and drum up business. It's wild. I want to say that as cool as it is and that it seems that we get to go out and go do these things, I want you to think about for a quick second what that means on the patient side on the opposite end. I'm a brand new rep, a fish or whatever, and here I am getting myself into certain cases that I shouldn't have any right to be in yet because I just got hired. I'm just now learning the product, and that is a car chase going on right now. I've never actually seen one of these live and in person, but I'm seeing it right now. This guy is running away. He just bolted. Oh man, this is crazy. That's wild. Sorry about that, guys. That's just completely wild. I can't believe I just saw that, and it's still going on like a dog and a squirrel. I got distracted, but I digress. Let me bring it back. So here we are as a device rep, being able to go cover cases from day one. And what is wild about that is you have to remember, from what I've talked about in previous videos, the patient should come first. You should be thinking about this process and how things, and I just passed another cop that's on the side of the road that just had spike tracks laid out. Oh man, this is crazy. You guys are in for a ringer on this one. But this is the life right here. Day in the life, guys. And when you're on the highway, you might see a high-speed chase. This is cop car number, I think, 7 at this point. So that's kind of exciting and kind of scary at the same time. But going back to the scariness, here you are as a rep. You're going into your first ever solo case because your senior rep can't make it for whatever reason. And the doctor asks you a question. Can you answer that question? Probably not, because you haven't been trained. And this is what I believe is just completely wild on the device side, is that these device companies hire you and get you to go out there to start covering these cases. And what are you offering besides being a liability to that company, being inside of these cases and not having the proper information and knowledge and word flow of what to say when all shit, hits the fan inside of the OR. You offer no support at that point, and you're, again, becoming a liability because you're not necessarily able to help the doctor at that point. And even if you come in as an associate, so yes, you have a senior rep that should be the one that's covering this case, and let's say you're the one that shows up first. Again, you're providing nothing if you haven't learned anything. This is still week 1, week 2, maybe month 1 into the field, but you're actually able to be there and have conversations with surgeons during their procedure in the OR, and you haven't been trained whatsoever on your product. So for me, I had a solid, and I mean solid, senior rep where he took time out of his day from when I got hired and even right before my start date, because I wanted to come in with an impact. And we sat down and went over product together, went over different conversations that would most likely be had. And I think it was 2 or 3 different procedures that he basically said from day one, I'd like you to start covering these, because they were pretty basic procedures. And we had gone over it in length for about a week prior to me even getting started. So I had a leg up to most of what you guys will have when it came to being a device rep for the very first time. But on top of that, I also had a medical terminology background. I had an exercise and physiology background. I had an anatomy and physiology background. So when it came to actually seeing the body parts, understanding what the fractures were and what was getting put back together, I understood all of that. So again, that was a big leg up onto what you guys have. But the experience, nonetheless, and when I've talked to other people, is still a experience where people like to say it's like you're drinking out of a fire hydrant, and that's very difficult to do because you're going to get blasted in the face. And if you're not choking from all the water just being shot down all your open orifices, you're trying to catch your breath while that's still happening. And that's what it's like when you're getting started in the field. There's just so much going on that you don't understand the majority of it, and you're a pretty big liability, in my opinion, when it comes to being in the OR. And in both of those situations, I didn't go to training until I was about 6 months into the field. And at that point, instead of me going to training and learning about my product and being able to just really kind of focus in on what it is to learn about medical devices, I was tasked to basically come out as the #1 rep from that training cohort because I had already been out in the field. So now the added pressure of needing to be #1 gets thrown onto you, on top of you having to pass multiple exams. And I saw firsthand while I was at both of these companies, people not pass their test and get sent home. So when people tell you it's a pass or fail and you feel the weight and the pressure of that, even in the interview process, it really is that. I'm not kidding. I saw it happen. People were fired and let go within that training process for not passing their exams. So take that for what it is, but that was my experience when it came to starting a medical device and pharma. I honestly don't think anything is going to change anytime soon when it comes to the device side. I feel like there should be some type of change because we are making an impact on the way that the OR is orchestrated. And if we aren't basically a support system and a person that can answer questions within the OR, we shouldn't be in the OR. And I say that just thinking about the patient themselves and what kind of distraction and liability a rep can be in the OR when they are not trained. I haven't had this happen to myself, but I've talked to other reps where people have fainted because they somehow got through the entire training process and got hired, or I guess not the training process, but they went through the entire hiring process, went into the OR and had never been around blood or anything, and then fainted in the OR. Again, liability. How did you get that far into this environment without seeing blood or anything and fainting in the OR? So needless to say, that company lost a ton of money on that rep because they can't even do what their job is intended to do. And again, when it comes to the reps that had gotten fired during their time at training, most of them were already within the field for several months. I want to say I was one of the few that was in the field for a lot longer than most. But when you think about that, you've now had a rep that's been in for, let's say, 5 months or so. You've been paying as a company that rep that entire time, and then they fail their test and get fired. What a waste of money that the medical device company just put toward that person. And it also happens in pharma, so I can't let it go on the pharma side as well, that whenever that happens, it only happens in device. That's completely wrong. And as we're still on this conversation, that is like cop car number 20. How have they not caught this guy yet? And it was like a Chevy Cruze or something. So don't be sleeping on the cruises. You know, when cars be fast, I guess. But I hope that was helpful. I'm sorry for all the chaos, but these are the day in the life. And I want to say, whichever route you decide to go on, be an asset, not a liability. Be the best that you can be and do things the right way. Your actions have a profound effect on what could happen to a patient, and you should be thinking about what it is that you can do to make sure that you're making a positive impact, because you would want the same done for yourself if you had a surgery that was coming up, or one of your family members or a friend. You would want them to have the best case possible. And it's all that I think about a lot of the times now. Whenever I think about family members or friends having to go get surgeries, I think about these situations that I had found myself in when I was in over my head, and I pray and tell them to ask a bunch of questions to the surgeons, because you just want to make sure that you're getting the best care possible. Here it is. It looks like they're going to catch the guy. Everybody's slowing down so that we can see. We're all rubbernecking because we all finally got to be a part of a high-speed car chase that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. From what I saw, 15 cop cars. My God. All right there. And that didn't include, like, probably the ones that, because I just passed 2 more that were